Welcome to TBR Live, interesting conversation with interesting people. Today's conversation will be with Dr. Laura Lewis. We're going to talk about relationships today. The good, the bad, the ugly, how to survive, how to get through, how to come out on the other side much better than when we started. You don't want to miss this episode, so stick around. TBR Live, interesting conversation with interesting people. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today's very special guest is Dr. Laura Lewis.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's just get into it. Tell the audience about yourself, about your career and all that stuff.
So I'm a licensed psychologist. I have been in the Atlanta area since 2012. I started Atlanta Couple Therapy at that time. I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida, kind of a small town. Growing up in Pensacola, I saw a lot of divorce, and so that really prompted me to want to start this therapy practice where I'm counseling couples.
Okay, all right, couples therapy. So how does that work?
So it's basically like couples come in, they come to see me. A lot of times couples come to see me when they're dealing with like communication problems, infidelity, sometimes depression, anxiety, and we work through it. And I teach them skills on how they can resolve whatever challenges that they're going through. We really work through a blueprint on how they can get back to loving each other again.
Okay. All right. So for the brothers and or sisters who don't like the idea of therapy, why come to therapy?
So to be honest, most people come to me when they have one foot out the door. When they're like, man, I'm like on my last leg, she's walked out the door and I want to save my marriage. Maybe we have kids together and I'm just like trying to keep our family together. In fact, most couples wait 5 to 7 years before they even think about coming to a couples therapist. So they may have been dealing with these issues for a long time before they actually get help, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. So when people get together, is it a good idea for them to already be whole individually?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely. Now there are different theories, and when I studied to get my Ph.D., I learned lots of different theories about couples therapy. Okay. And there's one theory, it's born out of the work of imago therapy, and it focuses on this idea that we heal each other. So the broken places in me, the broken places in you, I actually attract people that resonate to those broken places, and as a result we are able to mend through our brokenness. Other theories on couples therapy have that model of, well, we need to both be healthy before we try to start anything together, right? And I usually work from like a combination of those models. So
there's not one specific truth in that area, you just kind of work with whatever you have?
Yeah, I work with what comes in the door, right? And unfortunately, but a lot of people come to see me when they're in some wounded place, when it's something that they're dealing with that they never thought that they would be there. Because a lot of times when couples get married, they think, oh, this is happily ever after, everything's gonna be amazing, and then life happens.
So who is Dr. Laura Lewis?
Who am I?
Yeah.
I'm a married woman. I've been with my husband for 15 years. We met in college at Florida State. He was in his doctorate program and I was in undergrad, and we just fell in love, but we were kind of clueless about how to make this thing work. And so we dealt with a lot of challenges really early on in our marriage. We dealt with infidelity, we dealt with ups and downs in our income. and we just really worked through it together. And as a result, we've been able to build a marriage that is barely recognizable. Like, there were literally times when I thought, are we really gonna make it? But now I've seen that, like, we've been able to really work and repair our relationship. And so I come from the thought of, like, don't climb the ladder and then kick the ladder down behind you. So I put that work into a book, Marital Peace, and now I share it with couples like all around the world. I travel like internationally, like locally to different states, and I really love what I do, mostly because it's born out of a place of passion, right? Like, some people are in jobs and they're just like, oh my God, I hate this job. Is it Monday? But I really love what I do, and I think that has resonated not only in my own life, but also in the lives of the people that I serve.
Your book, I'm glad you brought that up. So tell us more about your book.
Yeah, so when I was in my doctorate program at Howard University in Washington, D.C., I had to write what's called a dissertation, which is like this long study. And I said, well, if I'm going to write this long study, why not put it on something that I'm passionate about? So I kind of share with you, I saw a lot of divorce in my family, and when I say a lot of divorce, everybody in my family is divorced. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, my parents, my siblings, like pretty much everybody's divorced. And so I kind of got a front row seat to what happens when a couple can go from this place of loving each other to like resentment, anger, distance. And so as a result of my study at Howard, I ended up interviewing hundreds of couples, and I found that there were certain things that made couples resilient, able to get through difficult times in their marriage. And so I put all of that into Marital Peace.
So if there happens to be someone watching and they are kind of at the edge, can they make it?
Yes, I mean, that's my specialty. I specialize in those couples who are at the edge, those couples who are like 1 foot out the door, those couples who are just like, gosh, I'm so tired of fighting all the time. That's the area that I specialize in. And I've seen couples go from the brink, like already have the attorney in place, like just need to sign these papers, to where they're in a relationship where they're excited to come home, where they drive in the parking lot and they're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see my mate. Communication
is typically a major issue.
Yes.
So what's a couple of good communication habits?
I'm so glad that you brought up communication, because communication is the #1 reason why couples divorce. It's not finances, though finances is up there high too. It's not issues with sex, though that's high up there too, but communication is the #1 reason why relationships break up. So a couple things that I encourage for couples to do is to make sure that they're listening to their mate, make sure that they're really hearing their mate. And most people think they're great communicators. But then I say, can you repeat back what he just said or what she just said? And the lens through which they hear what their mate has said is totally wrong. Like, it's not what their mate was trying to say at all. And so I really slow down the process of communication and do exercises like that, where I'm saying, okay, let me make sure that you heard him right. Let me make sure that you heard her right. And we really slow it down.
Okay, so for us, for the men.
Okay.
What's the difference between listening to you and hearing what you said?
So one is like you can hear the content of what someone said, so you can be able to repeat the words that they said, but also a big part of communication is intention and is body language. And I believe that we listen with our whole beings, like not just with our ears, but with our eyes, with our body language, with all of that. And so making sure that it's alignment with, like, you're not like looking over here while your mate is talking, yeah honey, I heard you. And then another thing, men tend to be like more task-oriented communicators, where it's like, all right, give me the highlights, like I don't need a whole story. And women tend to talk more like to build connection, right? Like, and so that's why a woman can like talk like for a long period of time, and a man can just like get right to the point, like let's solve this problem.
When we come to those kinds of places, What do we need to do?
So I believe that we can learn a lot from each other, and so I encourage, when I'm working with the woman, I say, okay, you can't like go on this huge rant. Like you have to focus on reeling it in a little bit. Okay. And then for the men, I encourage for the men to like really like empathize with the woman before like trying to solve the problem. Like really empathize with what she's feeling.
That can be a challenge for us.
Yes, I know.
Because it's not often that we don't care about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the circumstance might not mean anything, and sometimes we might not even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
How do we deal with that kind of stuff?
Well, one thing is timing. Like timing is so important. So if you're trying to talk to your mate and they're doing something, like they're in the middle of doing something, you want to make sure like, is this is good time? Is it okay? Like, or set up a time. Like, can we talk like later after we put the kids to bed? And so I believe that that's important. And then there's this other statement that I give to my couples that I'm working with, and I say, okay, this is how I want you to phrase what you're saying. When X happens, X is something specific. I feel Y. Y is an emotion word. And then I like Z. Z is a recipe for success. So for example, when I come home and clothes are everywhere, I feel overwhelmed. If you could help me out like once or twice a week, if you could like put the clothes up, that would like give me a huge like help. And so you see what I did? Like I wasn't like, you never put your clothes up. I'm so sick of you. Because then defensiveness would come up and it'll be hard to hear it that way. Yeah,
we would respond to that. Yeah. We would, yes. Well, most of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a formula or method for us to communicate to you guys what we're dealing with or what's going on with us, or is it a case-by-case thing, or how do you approach that?
So there's something that I recommend for couples typically in my first couple sessions, and that's called the 5 magical hours. Okay. And so a lot of couples I work with, they're busy, they got kids, they're like running back and forth, and they don't have a whole lot of time. And so I say, okay, let's just put 5 hours a week towards your relationship. Okay. And this helps couples to become more in tune with each other. And so it's time at the beginning of the day, 5 minutes, Monday through Friday, where they're checking in with each other, like, honey, what's going on today? What do you have planned for today? And then it's 20 minutes Monday through Friday where they are checking in. Well, how did that big meeting go? Like, I know you was gonna have this big meeting. How'd it go, babe? And so this helps them become in tune with what's happening on a daily basis. Because sometimes I find that that's what's missing, is that there's no like base where they're like checking in with each other's world, really. And then the other parts are 5 minutes where they're affirming each other, where they're sharing with each other the things they like and appreciate about one another. Sometimes I find that couples get to this place where they're just like taking each other for granted. Well, you should take out the trash. Well, you're supposed to cook the meals. And we have to be mindful of that in our relationships, because everybody wants to be appreciated, you know? And then the other piece is intimacy. Intimacy is an important part of the bonding in the relationship. So I say put 5 minutes every day to kissing, hugging, caress, a massage, but we have to connect on a physical basis on a regular basis. And then it's 2 hours for a date night once a week.
Okay. Loving your mate and liking your mate. Do we need both of them? Is there a difference? What's the deal with it?
Now, here's the thing. There are seasons in every relationship. And so there are seasons where like you're in a really great place and you are loving and liking your mate. And a lot of times this is in the beginning. Like you can't wait to see her. It's just a look and it's on. And then there are seasons where it's challenges. And there are different transitional periods where that tends to happen. Like in the research, it shows when couples transition to parenthood at first, like that's one crazy transition where we may not be loving or liking each other that much. Okay. Because you're tired, like you're getting up in the middle of the night every 2 hours. And so you may not be in that like good place, like right as you're transitioning into parenthood. Dealing with the loss, that can also wear on a relationship. Moving feeling. So there are different transitional periods that you may not be liking that person too much. But that's really normal that you'll have periods where you're not feeling as excited as you felt in the very beginning.
All right, so how do I deal with that when I love you dearly, but I can't stand you right now? How do I deal with that?
Well, one, like you talk about it, right? Like you say, like, what you give your mate a recipe for success. Like, what could she do that could help alleviate some of your stress, or what could she do that could be more of a support to you? You're mindful that I didn't say what she's doing that's getting on your nerves, right? Like, we don't want to frame it that way. So I think language is important.
Okay. Yeah. Some of us might say it that way.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea.
That is a very bad idea, because at the end of the day, like, you want your mate to be able to hear and receive what you're saying. And so language is really important with that. Like, if we come at our mate in a way that they're going to feel attacked, then it's going to be hard for them to say, okay, well, let me go do this thing that he's asking me to do, because then they may start to like cross complain and say, well, you did this last week, right? And we don't want that.
When we're taking care of our cars, we typically have to look out for certain things before they go bad on us. So when we're in relationships, are there certain things that we need to sort of pay attention to before things get out of hand?
Yeah. Okay. Like, one sign is one person is sleeping on the couch, and so like this is starting to grow. What made you laugh? Did that resonate with you?
Has it gotten too far at that point?
It has gotten too far, but okay. I mean, sometimes like people just say, oh, well, the baby is kind of noisy, so I'm just gonna sleep on the couch, and then that goes into days and weeks and weeks. Okay. Right? Other issues may be like we're just not meeting each other's needs. We may not even be aware of what each other's needs are, and so that's like an early sign of a problem. Like, we're not in tune with what each other's needs are. Or your mate comes to you and they say, hey, this is really important to me, and you know that is an issue, but you just neglect it, right? So sometimes couples know what their mate's needs are, like they know their mate like needs a little bit more support right now, but they just aren't really dialed in to meeting that.
Okay. The abusive relationships is it possible to survive them and stay together, or is it a good idea to just get away from each other? What do you think?
Well, I think there are levels of abuse, right? And so I used to work at a domestic violence shelter when I lived in New York, and I think like there are some levels that you just need to get away, right? If you are afraid for your life, if that person is like hitting, kicking, punching you, and like he's not, like he or she, because sometimes women can be abusive too, is not like trying to get any help, right? Or they're blaming you for the problem. They're like, well, I wouldn't hit you if you wasn't talking all that smack, right? Then you need to get away, right? If they won't acknowledge that this is a problem, if they're not trying to get any help, and you're afraid for your life, get out. But I do think that I do think that like things like emotional abuse, like while that is something that is significant as well, I think it's something that people can get help from. And if it has been physical violence in the past, but the person it's like situational and it's not like characterological. When I say characterological, I mean it's part of who the person is. If it's not characterological, then I think that the person can get help and support and repair the relationship.
So relationship advice, do you have any for us? If we're healthy but we want things to get better, if they're not so great and we want to get healthy, what can you tell us?
So one thing is couples retreats are really great, because it's something about like getting outside of the space where you're normally at in your day-to-day routine that can really help recharge your relationship. Going on vacation, that can really recharge your relationship. Or staycation, say you can't get all the way out of town, but you can say, okay, let's just go away for one night. You know, that can really recharge your relationship because you're not dealing with all of the distractions of day-to-day life. Also intimacy, we talked about that earlier, but intimacy is an important part of a relationship. And so just making sure that you're keeping people out of your business, because sometimes I see that that's a problem where people are telling other people the intimate details of what's happening in the relationship, and then someone's getting in their ear. And so being mindful about boundaries in the relationship is really important. And then quality time, making sure that you're spending regular quality time with each other.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So if we happen to share the same space for an extended amount of time, does that not qualify as quality time?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I recently did this radio interview about just the impact of social media on relationships and technology in general.
Okay.
And it used to be like 18 years ago, we didn't even have cell phones really like that.
Yeah.
But now I can leave the house, and if I love my cell phone, I'm doing a U-turn going back to the house to get my cell phone, because it's like, it's part of like my world. So much is in my phone. But just like technology has like helped us and stay connected to other people, it also can create a division in your relationship. Like say you're at home but you're on the computer the whole time. Your mate's right there, but y'all aren't engaging with each other. Or say you go to the restaurant, you're going out on a date but you're in your phone, she's in her phone. Like, what is that, you know? So I really encourage couples to just like put the phones away and just like spend some time like eyeball to eyeball, where you're like really engaged with each other.
Social media. So what kind of effect does that have on our relationships?
Oh, it's major. Like couples have come into my office for counseling and have full-blown fights over something that happened on social media. Like, why are you liking her page? Why is he commenting? Why are you friends with your ex? Like, we have boundaries in regular life, like you don't sleep with anybody else. Like, we have to have boundaries when it comes to social media too.
Yeah. So is it important, or is it even relevant that we understand our roles? I'm talking about the men and the women.
I'm wondering if the roles of men and women, yes.
Is it relevant? Is it necessary for everybody to sort of know what that is? What's your take on that?
So there are a couple different viewpoints that I have. One is that there are some inherent differences between men and women, and I think like we need to be aware of that, right? Like men are more like protectors, providers, and women are more like nurturers, caretakers. And so how this may show up in the family is the woman may be more likely to be taking care of the kids more than the male is, or the male may be like more like in tune like with what's happening in his career and be impacted greatly by what's happening in their career. And so that's the general idea of gender roles. But then there's this other element of what happens when something goes wrong, right? Like what happens when the woman just physically cannot like be the main like one with the kids for like health reasons, or what happens when the man loses his job. And so I think we have to have some conversation about generally like what are our hopes and desires when it comes to each of our roles as a husband and a wife, but we also need to have some fluidity of what happens when something goes wrong. Like me, I had major surgery and I had a cyst on my ovaries, and so I thought it was going to be an inpatient just an outpatient procedure, just go in, get the cyst off, and then be gone. But then it ended up being like a whole 4-week ordeal where I'm used to being really active, like I do yoga and hiking. Well, all of that went out the window when I had this surgery. And my husband was really there for me during that time. Like he helped me go to the bathroom, shower, like he was really there for me. And I think that created this bond in our marriage that like I never would have known if had not we been in a situation like that we could like bond together and have that fluidity around like, you know, who does what. And I think that creates a level of resiliency in relationships when you don't just hold rigidly like, no, you are supposed to be the provider, and if you don't provide, I'm out of here, right? But it's like give and take, you know.
So a good conversation can solve a lot of wars.
Absolutely. Communication is everything. Like so many issues could be resolved with effective communication.
Okay. Aside from your book, do you have anything else that you want to promote?
I have my practice, Atlanta Couple Therapy. If people want to connect with me, they can go to atlantacoupletherapy.com.
Consistency to whatever the plan is, how important is that?
So consistency to the plan, it can be very important, but it's not everything, right? Like if something happens, I used to be like, oh my God, I want to go to this event, and then like fussing at my husband, let's get to this event, to the point where like we're at the event, but now we're like arguing, and so then what's really the point? Like if we're not in a good place, we show up, but we're not like good right now. So I say have a plan, like have a real like kind of general plan of like we want to make sure that we're staying connected. We want to make sure that we know what's going on in each other's worlds and that we are support to each other. But then also have some room for compromise if something happens, you know, like have some flexibility with it.
That's all I got. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
Looking forward to doing this again.
Absolutely.